Welcome to the Deep Dive, a series on digital product and agile.
It's good to be here. Today, we're going to step away from the surface of Agile. We're not talking about the usual things, the Post-it notes, the stand-ups, the certification.
No, not at all. We want to look at something much deeper.
Something that really sits at the bedrock of how organizations, how they actually function, or sometimes how they don't.
Exactly. We're putting aside the hype and the buzzwords for a little while to do a bit of an organizational diagnosis. We really want to get into the mechanics of power, specifically that core tension that seems to plague, almost every modern company we look at.
And what's that?
It's the illusion of decision-making power versus the hard reality of the organizational structure.
It really is. It's that gap between what's written on paper on the job description. You own the product, you are the decision maker, and what happens the moment you actually try to say yes or no to something that, actually matters.
That's the moment, isn't it?
It's that moment when the rubber meets the road. And so often the road just disappears from under you.
Based on insights drawn from books by the author Matthew Coxall.
We're going to explore why that feeling of autonomy so often feels fragile, so conditional.
And why, despite all the money spent on agile transformations, so many teams and leaders still end up just stuck in gridlock.
Yeah.
And just a quick note for you listening, from here on out, we're going to be referring to the author simply as Matt.
Right. So Matt brings up this concept that I think, it really frames our entire conversation today. We need to talk about the risk gap.
The risk gap. Okay, let's dig into that, because usually when we talk about agile teams, the first words you hear are empowerment and autonomy.
Oh, absolutely. Trust the team.
Trust the team. It's the mantra of the whole industry. But Matt points out that this trust often has a very specific and usually invisible boundary.
It does. And to really get this, I want you to just think about your own work environment for a second. Most teams on the day-to-day, they feel quite autonomous, right? Sure. If you want to decide whether the button on the landing page should be, blue or green, go for it.
Yeah, run an A/B test. No one cares.
Knock yourself out. No one's calling the CEO for button colors. That is what we'd call low-stakes autonomy.
Okay.
If you want to decide if your team tackles this minor bug on a Tuesday or a Wednesday, that's all you.
Yeah.
The decision is yours.
Right, but that's just it. That's the small stuff. Watch what happens when a decision carries real weight.
Exactly.
Like real financial risk or reputational risk, or maybe it goes against the accepted strategy.
All of a sudden, that autonomy it evaporates, it's gone. The empowered team suddenly finds itself in a room full of stakeholders.
Or worse, writing, a 10-page brief for some executive committee.
Yes. Or just waiting on an email chain that seems to include 3 different vice presidents and, for some reason, a legal counsel. The stakes go up, the autonomy goes down.
It's the difference between being allowed to rearrange the furniture in your bedroom and being allowed to knock down a wall.
That's a great analogy.
One is just decoration, the other is structural, and you're not touching the structure.
Precisely. And Matt connects this directly to psychological safety and the fear of judgment. Now, in the source material about the Scrum Master's role, there's a really heavy emphasis on psychological safety being the cornerstone of any high-performing team.
Yeah, this is that Google Project Aristotle stuff, right? The idea that a team needs to feel safe, to take risks, to be vulnerable.
That's the one. But we have to ask a really critical question here. Is that safety structural, or is it just polite?
Ooh, that is the million-dollar question. Because I think we usually interpret psychological safety as people are nice to each other.
Right. Everyone's friendly in the meetings.
There are no bad ideas during the brainstorm, that kind of thing.
But true psychological safety is about what happens when you fail. It's about risk. If I make a decision, and that decision loses the company a bunch of money, or it delays a launch by 2 weeks because I wanted to prioritize fixing some technical debt, what happens to me?
In a lot of organizations, you get thrown under the bus.
Yeah.
Plain and simple.
If the organization is fundamentally command and control, but it's just sort of wearing an agile costume, then the fear of judgment is massive.
It's crippling.
And Matt discusses this in the context of what he calls a blame culture. If the culture says, we empower you, but the subtext, the thing everyone knows but doesn't say, is if you mess up, you are on your own.
Then no one takes a real risk.
No rational person actually takes full ownership. It's just simple self-preservation.
So what do they do instead? They seek air cover.
Air cover.
I
Exactly.
see that all the time. I've probably done it myself. That's when you call a meeting, not to actually make a decision, but just to get enough people in the room to nod their heads.
So that if it goes south,
You can say, well, we all agreed. It wasn't just me.
it is risk diffusion. You're not making a decision. You're spreading the potential blame across enough people that no single person can be held responsible for it.
And that creates the risk gap.
That's it. The gap between the authority you're told you have and the safety you actually feel in exercising it.
And Matt argues that this is where true ownership gets masked by what we could call performative empowerment.
Performative empowerment. That is a stinging term, but it feels very accurate.
It feels like parents letting their toddler drive the car while it's parked in the driveway.
Yeah.
You know, the kid is there spinning the wheel, making vroom vroom noises, feeling great, feeling totally in control. But the engine isn't on.
And the parents have the keys in their pocket.
Exactly. It's a harsh analogy, but it describes so many systems.
It really does.
Yeah.
And this leads us right into the distinction Matt draws between servant leadership as a concept and the gritty reality of corporate hierarchy. The sources, they talk a lot about the Agile mindset, flipping the pyramid.
Yeah, the leader serves the team. They work for the team. I'm here to remove your blockers.
It sounds great on a slide. I work for you.
Right.
Wonderful. But let's look at what Matt calls the permission loop. This is where the beautiful theory hits a very hard wall.
Okay, the permission loop.
If a product owner or a scrum master has to socialize a decision, and that's a term that appears so often in corporate life.
Socialize. I hate that word.
Me too.
Mm.
If they have to socialize it until every single stakeholder is comfortable, do they actually own that decision?
Socializing a decision. That's just code for lobbying, isn't it? It's walking around the office, figuratively, and just begging for sign-offs before the real meeting even starts so you don't get ambushed.
It is. It is pre-meeting consensus building. And you're only doing it because you don't have the actual authority to just decide in the room.
Right.
And if the system, the structure, demands upward approval for anything significant, then the servant leader isn't really empowering the team to decide. They're empowering the team to suggest.
And there's a profound difference between a suggestion box and a control panel.
A massive difference. And just think about the energy drain there, the waste. If I have to spend 40% of my week just socializing a decision to get permission to do my job.
That's 40% of your time not creating value, not talking to customers, not working with your team.
It's pure organizational friction.
So we have this tension. We've got teams that are, in theory, self-organizing and empowered, but structurally they are tethered to this permission loop the moment anything gets real.
And this brings us to the person who feels this tension most acutely. If there is a ground zero for this entire dysfunction, it is the product owner.
The PO, the so-called CEO of the product.
That is the phrase everyone loves to use. You are the CEO of your product. It's meant to be inspiring, right, to convey total ownership. But Matt's work on the product owner role, it really highlights a fascinating paradox here.
He distinguishes between different types of POs, doesn't he? It's not a monolithic role.
He does, and it's a critical distinction. He draws a clear line between the advanced PO, who is strategic, looking at the market, at ROI, at the bigger picture, and the tactical PO.
Who is more of a backlog administrator.
Exactly, ticket writer. And I saw in the source material, there's actually a comparison table Matt uses to show the difference between a product owner and a product manager.
Right, and that terminology can get so messy because different companies use those titles for different things.
They do. So let's ignore the titles for a second and look at the function Matt describes. The friction almost always lies in the gap between accountability and authority.
Okay, walk me through that. Accountability versus authority.
So in many, many organizations, the PO is held accountable for the value delivered. If the product fails, it's on them.
It's their fault.
If users hate it, if the metrics don't move, it's their neck on the line. They are the public face of the success, or, more often, the failure.
And this is the big but. Do they have the authority to enforce the strategy that would actually deliver that value?
Often no. And that right there is the product owner paradox.
Yeah.
You are accountable for the outcome, but you lack the authority over the inputs.
Because the authority is held elsewhere.
Exactly. Matt talks about stakeholder mapping, identifying who has high power and high interest. And so often, it's those high power stakeholders who hold the real authority, the real veto power.
So let's play out a scenario. A PO has done all the research. They've talked to users. They've looked at the data. They know with high confidence that feature A is what users need and what will move the needle.
Okay.
But a high-power stakeholder, let's say it's the VP of sales, comes in and says, look, I promised feature B to a huge client. We need to build feature B now. It's critical for my quarterly numbers.
A classic situation. Now, in a truly empowered environment, the PO could look at that VP and say, I understand the pressure you're under, but based on our product strategy and the data we have, feature A drives more long-term value for the business. We're doing A.
But in the real world, what happens 99% of the time?
In the real world, if the PO says that, the VP of sales escalates it. They go straight to the PO's boss, or they go to the CTO, and eventually an email comes down from on high.
And the message is, just do feature B.
Just get it done. And so the stakeholder wins, the PO is defeated, and they end up just trying to find a way to cram feature B into the sprint, which probably messes up everything else.
And that is the perfect example of performative empowerment.
It's the absolute definition of it. If the decision rights are unclear, or if any conflict has to travel up the org chart to an executive to be resolved, the PO is not the CEO of the product.
They're the secretary of the product.
Ouch, that's harsh. But it's true. They're taking dictation from the loudest or most powerful voices in the room.
It hurts to hear because it's the reality for so many product owners.
It is. And Matt really emphasizes that the advanced PO, the strategic one, needs to own the roadmap. But even more crucially, they have to own the word no.
If you cannot say no, your yes is meaningless.
That's a powerful line, isn't it? It's not a real yes if you don't have the option to say no. It's just compliance. You're just agreeing.
But structurally, so many organizations haven't built the support system to allow that PO to say no and have it stick.
They haven't made the authority explicit. They say you decide, but what they really mean is you decide as long as everyone else agrees with your decision, which is not a decision at all.
So we've got this friction at the individual level, at the team level. But what happens when we zoom out? Because Matt talks a lot in the sources about scaling Agile and the organizational impediments that just multiply with growth.
Yes.
It's one thing to have this problem with a single team of 5 or 6 people. It's a completely different beast when you have 50 teams.
This is where we see what I would call authority drift.
Authority drift. I like that image. It sounds like a continent slowly, imperceptibly moving away.
Or a boat that's lost its anchor and is just slowly drifting out to sea. It's what happens when you add layers. Matt discusses these scaling frameworks like Nexus, or the introduction of things like integration teams and executive action teams.
Which, on the surface, makes sense. You can't have 50 teams all running in 50 different directions. You do need some coordination, some alignment.
Of course you do. But the unintended side effect, almost always, is that decision rights get diluted.
They don't get redrawn, they just get blurry.
Blurry is the perfect word. And the result is a phenomenon we can call decision latency.
Decision latency. Okay, define that for us.
Think about it as the time it takes for a simple question to travel from the person doing the work up through all the new layers to someone who actually feels safe enough to give a clear answer, and then for that answer to travel all the way back down.
Okay, so let's play this out. I'm a developer on a team. I hit a roadblock. It's a technical issue, but the solution requires a small change in direction for the feature we're building.
Right. Now, in a small startup, that latency is what, 5 minutes? You turn your chair around, you ask the founder, hey, can we change this API? The founder says, yes, good idea, done.
Latency is nearly 0.
The decision is made at the speed of conversation. Now, in a massive enterprise with 50 teams and multiple layers,
Oh boy.
you, the developer, ask your PO. Your PO isn't sure if they have the authority because it might affect another team. So they ask the product manager. The product manager needs to check with the solution architect to ensure it's compliant with the global standards.
And the architect is booked solid for 3 weeks.
So the latency just went from 5 minutes to 3 weeks, or maybe months. And in that time, what's the team doing?
They're paralyzed, they're waiting, they're blocked.
And nature abhors a vacuum. When there's a vacuum of clear decision-making, something else fills that space.
Rumors, panic, people just working on whatever they feel like.
All of the above. And shadow ownership.
Shadow ownership. This is a concept from the stakeholder mapping source material, isn't it?
It connects to it very strongly. Matt identifies these stakeholders he calls context setters. These are usually people with very high power, but maybe low interest in the day-to-day details.
So an executive, a founder who can't let go.
Exactly. These are people who make decisions in hallways or on a random Slack message.
Ah, the water cooler strategy or the drive-by decision.
You got it. A decision might officially belong to the product owner. It's in the backlog, it's been prioritized, the team is ready to work on it. But then a context setter, Maybe that VP of sales, again, mentions casually to an engineer or a manager in the elevator, I really think we need to be focused on X.
And just like that, with no meeting, no ticket, no discussion, the team is suddenly working on X.
The real decision wasn't made in the planning meeting. It wasn't made by the designated owner. It was made in the shadows. And this is so incredibly destructive because it's invisible.
You can't audit a hallway conversation.
You can't hold a hallway conversation accountable. It undermines the entire process.
And it completely destroys the morale of the person who is supposed to be the owner. Why should I bother doing all the analysis, all the research, using frameworks like HRIC, which Matt mentions? Why do all that hard work if one shadow comment from an executive just overrides it all?
Precisely. RACI, for context, stands for reach, impact, confidence, and effort. It's a great logical way to use data to prioritize your work, but shadow ownership doesn't care about your RACE score.
It cares about power and influence.
And Matt warns about this in the section on organizational impediments. When the official stated structure doesn't match the real power structure, the only thing you get is cynicism. The team learns not to trust the process.
I want to touch on another group that Matt highlights in the source material, the specialists.
Yeah.
The architects, the UX leads, the security analysts. They aren't management in the traditional sense, but they wield an enormous amount of power. How do they fit into this authority drift?
This is what we could call the specialist trap, and Matt argues that in a traditional siloed structure, these specialist roles often act as gatekeepers.
They hold veto power.
Yes. You cannot pass until the architecture diagram is approved by me. You cannot ship this until every pixel is perfect according to my UX review.
Right. And in that model, who really owns the decision to ship?
Well, it's not the PO. The team might want to ship a feature. The PO wants to ship it. The business needs it. But if the architect says no, then the decision to ship effectively belongs to the architect.
But Matt argues for a different model, a shift in thinking here, doesn't he?
He does. He talks about moving from being a gatekeeper to being an enabler, or, my favorite analogy, providing guardrails instead of gates.
What's the real difference between a gate and a guardrail?
Think about driving on a highway. A gate stops you dead. You have to stop your car, show your ID, maybe pay a toll, and ask for permission to proceed. That is a permission loop. It's a bottleneck.
Okay.
A guardrail, on the other hand, keeps you safe while you continue moving at 60 miles per hour. It defines the safe zone of operation.
It says, stay on the road, don't drive off the cliff, but within this space, you have freedom to maneuver.
Exactly. Matt's insight, which draws from lean thinking, is that specialists should provide the clear parameters within which the team can make its own decisions. Here are the security standards you must meet. Here are the core brand guidelines. As long as you operate within these guardrails, you do not need to ask me for permission. Just go.
That sounds like actual, genuine empowerment. You decide, just don't crash the car.
It is. But when specialists retain veto power on every single micro decision, ownership is stripped from the team yet again. It just becomes another permission loop. It turns these brilliant specialists into bottlenecks instead of accelerators.
So we have shadow ownership from above, we have gatekeepers from the side, and we have these permission loops all over the place. It feels like the organization is trying to prevent bad decisions by preventing any decisions.
Yeah, is a very, very profound way to put it. We become so afraid of making the wrong decision that we create a system where making any decision at all is an endurance sport.
Wow.
And to mask this paralysis, organizations often engage in something we can only describe as alignment theater.
Alignment theater. I feel like I've bought tickets to this show many, many times. I might have even starred in it a few times.
I think we've all been in the cast at some point. Matt discusses this in the context of navigating stakeholder relationships and conflict mediation. We use the word alignment all the time, but it's often a code word.
A code word for what?
For diffusing responsibility. When I say we really need to get aligned on this, what I'm often actually saying is, I do not want to be the only one holding the bag if this goes wrong. I need all of you to agree with me so that I'm safe.
So we schedule a meeting. And then because that meeting didn't solve it, we schedule another meeting.
And we invite everyone, and this is where it gets really tricky. Matt talks about the RHI matrix, responsible, accountable, consulted, informed. It's a classic tool. But the real danger zone is the C. The
people whose opinions and input we need.
Theoretically, yes. But in alignment theater, the people in the consulted box start behaving as if they are approvers.
Oh, I see what you mean. Their role is to give input, but they act as if they have veto power. I'm just here to give my thoughts, but if they don't like it, they can stop the whole train.
And they do. If your consulted group has de facto veto power, then the person who is officially accountable, usually the poor PO is completely paralyzed. They spend their entire life just trying to get all the consulted people to agree rather than delivering value to the customer.
It's that meetings replacing decisions dynamic. If we're all in a room and we talk for an hour about the problem, we feel productive. We feel like we did work. We were busy.
But did we actually decide anything? Usually not. We usually decide to schedule a follow-up meeting to socialize the options further.
Validation replaces clarity.
That's it, exactly.
Matt has an insight here that I think is crucial about the role of stakeholders. He's not saying they're bad.
No, not at all. He notes that stakeholders are essential to success. You can't build a product in a vacuum. But they can also be the source of these competing priorities that gridlock the system if the designated decision owner isn't truly empowered to break the tie.
Right. If sales wants feature A and marketing wants feature B, and the PO tries to please both by building some watered-down hybrid, you just get a Frankenstein product that pleases no one.
You do. You need someone with the power and the safety to look at the situation and say, marketing, you win this one. Sales will get to your need next, or vice versa.
And that takes us right back to psychological safety. It takes a lot of guts to tell a powerful VP of sales, you lose this round. If you know the organization won't back you up, you'll never do it.
You'll just call another lineup meeting.
So we've diagnosed the symptoms, we have latency, we have theater, we have shadow power. I want to get to the absolute core mechanism here. There's a line you used earlier when we were prepping for this that I think just sums it all up perfectly.
If accountability sits in one place and authority in another, friction becomes predictable.
Let's just pause on that. That should be on a billboard in every corporate office park.
It is the fundamental law of organizational physics.
Yeah.
You cannot escape it. Matt shares a case study in the servant leadership section where a product owner was consistently bypassed. The PO was held accountable for the backlog, for the release dates. They were the one who had to explain to leadership why things weren't getting done on time.
Okay, so they had the accountability.
Full accountability, but the stakeholders, various managers and execs, were going around them.
Directly to the developers.
Directly to the developers. Hey, can you just sneak this little fix in for me? Hey, this is super urgent for my department.
Yeah.
The stakeholders had the informal authority, socially or hierarchically, to assign work.
And the PO had the accountability for the plan that was just being destroyed.
Precisely. And what was the result?
I can guess. Chaos.
Total collapse. Process collapse and morale collapse. The development team is confused and stressed. Who do I listen to? The PO or this VP who signs my bonus?
Yeah.
The PO is resentful and demoralized. Why am I even bothering to plan if it all gets overridden? And eventually, even the stakeholders get frustrated. Why is everything so chaotic? Why can't this team deliver anything on time?
And the organization's response is usually to try and fix the people, not the system.
Exactly. They hire a better project manager, or they do a big Agile reset, or they just blame the individuals. That PO just isn't strong enough. That team just isn't disciplined.
When really it's not a personality flaw at all.
It's a structural failure. It's a system design problem. You separated the power to decide from the responsibility for the outcome. The friction was inevitable.
This also shows up in those classic conflicts between departments, doesn't it? Matt has these case studies about executives versus engineering or UX versus business goals.
Yes. And these are so often framed as personality clashes. We say things like, oh, the head of sales and the head of engineering just don't get along.
They just have different styles. They don't speak the same language.
Right. But you're saying it's deeper than that. It's not about personalities.
It is a fundamental failure to define who owns the trade-off. Let's take the most classic example in the book. Engineering says, if we build this feature this fast, it will be unstable. It's too risky. We need 2 more sprints to refactor the foundation. And the business says, if we don't have this feature for the trade show next month, we miss the market window. We need it now.
The immovable object meeting the unstoppable force. A daily occurrence in tech.
So in a healthy system, who owns that decision? Who owns the risk?
Ideally, I would think the business owner, the person accountable for the commercial outcome.
Ideally, yes. If the business is willing to explicitly accept the risk of the system crashing in exchange for speed to market, that should be their call to make. But so often the organization hasn't defined that, so they just argue, they negotiate, they have meetings.
And this is where Matt suggests tools to help, right, to get past the argument.
He does. He talks about mediated negotiation and trying to make data-driven decisions. He brings up prioritization frameworks like weighted shortest job first or WSJF to calculate the cost of delay.
WSJF. That's a term from the Scaled Agile framework. SAFe.
It is. It's a formula, basically. You divide the cost of delay by the job size or duration. It gives you a number. The whole idea is to say, let's stop arguing based on our opinions and our job titles, and let's look at the math.
And those are great tools. They can be very helpful.
They are. But here's the critical point. Tools do not solve a power vacuum. We are only relying on negotiation because we lack definition.
That's a huge insight.
If we knew clearly who owned the decision, we wouldn't need to argue for 3 weeks. We would simply present the data. Here's the risk of crashing. Here's the cost of delay. And the single known owner would make the call. I accept that risk, proceed, or I don't accept that risk, let's delay.
And because we don't have that clarity, we just have endless meetings, stress, and delay.
Okay, so we've painted a pretty stark, and maybe for some listeners, a pretty familiar picture of the dysfunction. The risk gap, shadow ownership, alignment theater. It's exhausting just talking about it.
It is.
But Matt's work isn't just a critique, it's also a guide. How do we start to shift this? What does a mature, healthy organization actually look like in this context?
The real shift, the fundamental change, comes down to one thing. Making decision boundaries visible and explicit.
Visible decision boundaries.
It's about moving away from the illusion of command and control and toward true, decentralized decision-making. And to do that requires a very sophisticated mental shift for leaders and for teams.
Which is?
Separating input from ownership.
Talk to me more about that. Input versus ownership.
In an immature organization, listening to input gets confused with getting agreement. If I, as a leader, ask for your opinion on something, you think that means I need your permission to proceed.
Right, and then you get the classic complaint. You asked me what I thought, I told you I didn't like it, and you did it anyway. You didn't listen to me.
Exactly. But a mature leader, and more importantly, a mature system, understands the difference. I can and I should listen to everyone. I should get input from the architect, from the customer, from the sales team, from the newest intern. Good ideas can come from anywhere.
Right.
But at the end of the day, after all that input has been gathered, only one person pulls the lever. Only one person makes the final call.
And the key is that everyone in the room needs to know who that person is before the discussion even starts.
Precisely. If we walk into a meeting and we all know that Sarah decides, then the entire purpose of the meeting changes. It becomes about informing Sarah. We are all there to give her the best possible data and perspectives so she can make the best possible bet.
And if we go into that same meeting not knowing who decides,
then the meeting is a power struggle. It's a game of King of the Hill where everyone is fighting to have their opinion win. It's a competition.
That distinction is huge. Informing Sarah versus fighting for control. It changes the entire temperature and purpose of the room.
Matt also brings in a really interesting concept from the specialist source material, connecting system thinking and YYP limits, work in progress limits.
We usually apply WIP limits to development work, right? Don't have too many tickets open at the same time. The mantra of stop starting, start finishing.
Correct. But Matt argues that you can, and you should, apply this same thinking to decisions.
How does that work?
A decision that is being debated or socialized or is just sitting in someone's inbox waiting for approval is essentially inventory. It's waste in the lean sense of the word. It's a valuable part sitting on the factory floor, half assembled and gathering dust. It holds potential value, but that value is trapped until the decision is made.
So limit WIP for decisions means what? Don't have 10 major strategic debates open all at once?
Exactly that. Finish one decision before you open up the next one. If a critical decision sits in an approval queue for 2 weeks, that is 2 weeks of organizational waste. A mature system treats a stalled decision as an emergency, not as business as usual.
Decision inventory. I really like that framing. We usually think of inventory as physical boxes in a warehouse, but unread emails in an inbox are inventory too.
And they rot faster than fruit. Information decays. The market changes. If you wait 3 months to finally make a decision, the data you based it on is probably already wrong.
And this ties all the way back to that advanced PO role we touched on earlier. Matt talks about moving them from being a backlog secretary to a true product manager.
Yes, the advanced PO owns the roadmap. But crucially, Matt points out that they must operate beyond the boundaries of their single team. They need to be so tightly aligned with the high-level business strategy that they don't need to ask for permission on every single backlog item.
It's about earning trust, but a trust that's verified by clear strategy and good data.
And it brings us back full circle to the iron triangle scope, time, and cost or quality. The final structural thought here is really this. If you want a person to be accountable for the outcome, the risk, you absolutely must give them the authority over the inputs.
You can't tell someone, you are responsible for creating a Michelin-star dinner, and then lock the fridge and tell them they're only allowed to use a microwave and yesterday's leftovers.
Or stand over their shoulder and tell them exactly how much salt to add to every dish. If they truly own the meal, they have to own the kitchen.
So what does this all mean for you, the listener? We've covered a lot of ground here. We've dissected a lot of dysfunction that might feel very close to home.
I think we need to close with a bit of a reflective challenge. We can't fix your organization in an hour. We can't, beam into your office and fire the shadow stakeholders. But you can start to see your system differently.
So let's try a little organizational self-diagnosis.
Start by asking yourself this. Where do decisions stall in your organization? I mean, physically or digitally. Where do they go to die? Is it in a specific weekly steering committee meeting? Is it in one particular person's email inbox? Is it on a specific Slack channel that everyone ignores?
That's a great question. And then, who absorbs the pain of that delay? Is it the team that has to work nights and weekends to make up for the lost time? Is it the customer who's still waiting for a critical bug fix or a much-needed feature?
Because usually the pain of the delay is felt by the people at the bottom of the hierarchy, not by the people causing the delay at the top.
That is a very sobering thought.
And finally, a tough one. Is ownership in your world clear? Or is it socially negotiated in the hallways and back channels? If you had to bet $100 right now on who truly owns a specific important decision, would you win that bet? Or would you lose your money to a shadow owner you didn't even know was in the game?
That's the real test, isn't it? If you can't confidently name the single owner, then there probably isn't one.
Or even worse, everyone in the room thinks they are the owner. And that is a guaranteed recipe for conflict and gridlock.
Matt's work is a powerful reminder that Agile isn't just about moving faster. It's not about the ceremonies or the tools. It's about clarity. It's about making the invisible structures of power visible so we can stop fighting the system and actually start getting meaningful work done.
And realizing that autonomy without structural safety is just a trap. True empowerment requires clear boundaries and the genuine safety to operate within them.
A fascinating and I think very necessary look at the machinery of our daily work lives. This has been The Deep Dive, part of a series on digital product and Agile.